This is my 2009 Subaru Forester, and today I'm going to give you a quick tour of it. So terrible Doug DeMiro impressions aside, this is my new car. It is a 2009 Subaru Forester Limited. It has 150,000 miles on it, and I paid $5,000 for it. Now yes, I understand you can get something a lot more interesting for $5,000. Obviously this isn't really a sports car, it's not a big off-road truck or anything super interesting. It's definitely not going to turn any heads. That being said, as far as I'm concerned, this is the best overall car on the road, and today I'm going to show you why. So I've only had a couple weeks with the car, so this isn't going to be a full in-depth review. I will make another video later on once I've had more time to get comfortable with the car and understand all the ins and outs of it. What this video is going to be is a tour showing you some of the more interesting parts of the car, some of the more frustrating things about it, and why I love it so much. So one thing I find completely ridiculous is that when you have the door locked, you can't open it. It's like child safety locks, but in the front seat. The driver's door is the same way, and I do not understand. Obviously, it works just fine when it's unlocked, but if you lock the door, you're locked in. So you stop, and you have to, every time, open it, and then you can open the door. It doesn't make any sense, and the Toyota Corolla I'd been driving before this was the same way, so it must be a Japanese thing. I have no idea. It doesn't make any sense to me. I get it with the back doors, I guess, although there are child safety locks if you're that worried about it. I mean, most children can probably figure out how this works. But I really wish it wouldn't do that. Probably isn't the best angle to show you this, but apparently it's the best I can do. So one thing I noticed right when I got in the car for the first time was there's a keyhole on the glove box, just like a convertible car. Now, of course, with a convertible, it's so people can't steal your stuff when the top is down. This, of course, not a convertible. So I was wondering why it was there. The car actually comes with three keys. Two black keys, which work for everything, including the glove box, and then there's a valet key, which is gray. Now the valet key doesn't limit the power of the car, of course, like some exotic cars do. All it does is not open the glove box, so you can lock your valuables in the glove box and people won't be able to get into it without a special key. While we're down here, it's also worth mentioning the glove box is fairly good size. You can fit all of the essentials like your owner's manual, registration, and even your animal cookies for when you get hungry on your long road trips. So like I mentioned earlier, this is the limited trim, which means it's got a lot of the bells and whistles. Not quite everything. For instance, it does not have navigation. It's got the 6-disc CD changer, which is an upgrade over the standard one, I believe, but not quite navigation. But it does come with some really cool things. For instance, automatic climate controls. You can simply set a temperature and the car does the rest of the work for you, which is pretty convenient, as well as a giant sunroof here, which, you know, is fairly large, and of course you got controls to open that. One thing that I do want to mention about the sunroof, let me flip the camera around here. So one thing worth mentioning about the sunroof is when you go to open it, it actually opens into the roof of the car, which means you can't crack it open like you can most sunroofs because it actually goes under the body panel. It slides underneath here. You can see there's a gap right in there instead of propping up and then sliding on top of the car. Presumably that's so you don't hit anything you have on the roof rack. I'm not really sure, but it does mean you have to have it open if you want any air coming through. You cannot just have it cracked in the back like you can in a lot of cars. Another thing that's kind of cool about the higher trim levels is you do get leather seats. Now, I'm not a huge fan of leather seats. I do like that they don't stain as easily, but they do get incredibly hot in the summer and also incredibly cold in the winter. Luckily, these ones are heated, and the driver's seat is power, which means it can slide forward, tilt, all of that. It even has lumbar support, which is really cool. Unfortunately, the passenger seat is manual. Apparently, that was not in the budget to give it power passenger seat, but the driver's seat is very nice. On the topic of seats, something you also don't usually see in SUVs like this is reclining rear seats. Unfortunately, this button down here is incredibly hard to push. You really have to want it if you actually want the seat to be able to move. It's not an easy process, but they do recline ever so slightly. Another thing you immediately notice when you get in the back seat of one of these is this weird little thing in the middle, which is actually where the cup holders are at. It's kind of cool. It flips out, or when you don't need it, it flips back in. It also has little blue lights right around on the inside here, which you can't really see in the day, but at night they do light up. It's strange because there's really only 3 spots where you see those blue lights. It's down here, up in the center under the climate controls there, and then there's a little blue light up by the dome lights as well, which, you know, is strange. You do also get a nice armrest here in the middle, which apparently I can't operate. So you get both. You get this weird little flippy thing, and you get an armrest, although the cup holders are not in the armrest. They are down here, right in the center, which is kind of weird if, you know, you're trying to fit someone in the middle, but it does work. So one of the things I really like about this car is that it has plenty of room for all of your cargo. Because it is a hatchback or a small SUV, whatever you want to call it, it does have a lift gate, which gives you easy access to the trunk. Now, it looks like a normal lift gate. One thing that it doesn't have on it, though, is a keyhole, which means if you want to open it, you have to first unlock all of the doors. Now, when they're unlocked, it's nice and easy. There's a button, it opens just like you would expect. But if the doors are locked, you have to first go around and unlock the doors before you can open this, which is annoying if you don't have a key fob, which means you have to go in, open the door, push the unlock button, shut the door, come back around, open this. It's just kind of a process, which if it had a keyhole, would not be the problem. So once you eventually do get the lift gate open, it seems fairly normal. You have plenty of headroom above because of the way the lift gate opens, so if you want to go tailgating with your Forester, you certainly can. But there are some really cool features in here that Subaru has built in that I really enjoy. So easily my favorite part of the trunk of this car is the extra storage underneath the floor. So you do have a nice big rubber mat to keep everything nice and dry when you put wet cargo in it. But underneath here, where you would expect to see the spare tire, you actually have a lot of storage. You have these nice little pockets, including removable ends here, so you can fit the tonneau cover in, which I don't have, but it does fit underneath here, so you can store it away. And you can also fit all sorts of other stuff back here, like an umbrella, snacks, gloves, anything you could possibly need is under here. And then underneath all of that, you still have your spare tire and your jack and everything else you could need. It's really awesome. Huge fan, which means it being a hatchback, of course you can see inside of it. It does have tinted windows, but if you really wanted to, you could still see inside. This way you can put stuff underneath the floor so people can't see into it just like you would in a sedan. Some other really neat little touches in the trunk include a 12-volt power socket, so you can plug anything in you want in the back of the car. Unfortunately, it's not powered when the ignition is off, but I'm sure that'll come in handy at one point or another. You also have little bag hooks here, which are actually scattered. There's 4 of them all around the back. There's 2 more on this side as well. There is only 1 outlet, but 4 bag holders, and you also get a nice little dome light back here. There's actually 3 dome lights. There's this one, that one, and then way up front you have those little ones up above the driver's seats. So you have plenty of light, plenty of bag holders, and even a 12-volt outlet, which makes this thing very useful. As far as storage is concerned, like I mentioned earlier, you do have a fairly decent sized trunk behind the seats, as well as the storage below, and you can get a tonneau cover, which goes right over the top to cover all of your cargo so no one can see in. You also have this cool little net in here, which goes across the back. It connects to a couple of these little tie-down areas, which there are a few of back here actually. There's some on the ceiling, there's a couple down on the bottom, there's 4 actually around the corners. So you can tie stuff down if you want. And of course, if this isn't enough space, like every other car, the seats do fold down, and it's a 60-40 split. And then you have all sorts of room to fit all of your cargo. It's actually quite a bit of space. I think it's like 60 some odd cubic inches or feet. What are cars measured in? Whatever it is, it's fairly good size. You can actually fit a lot back here. So when I was shopping around for cars, the one thing I knew I wanted was something that was very practical and very versatile, because I can't afford to have 5 different cars for 5 different occasions. This thing had to perform in all of them. Of course, the Subaru lives up to its sport utility name by giving you a solid metal roof rack on top, the ability to tow a trailer up to 2,400 pounds, as well as a tremendous all-wheel drive system. This, of course, has Subaru's symmetrical all-wheel drive system, which is an industry favorite and widely thought to be the best system on the market. I don't actually have a towing hitch on it yet, although I will be putting one on, and the all-wheel drive is incredibly comforting when you live somewhere like I do, where it snows quite a lot. But of course it's practical. It is a Subaru after all. The real question is it fun? And I can confidently say it is. This beast of a race car has a whopping 170 horsepower, as well as a sport mode, traction control off button, and dual exhausts. Dual exhausts, yeah. Yeah, clearly it's not a sports car. It's not really particularly fast. It doesn't have a lot of power, but the handling is pretty good and it's fairly entertaining. Plus, like I mentioned, it has a sport mode, which doesn't tighten up the suspension or the throttle response or anything like that. All it does is really hold the shifts longer and let you shift on your own if you really wanted to. Overall, I'd say it's about as sporty as I'd want it to be, considering I'm going to drive it every day. I'm not one of those people that's willing to compromise on comfort just to get a little bit of road feel while I'm driving to work and back. Like I said at the beginning of the video, there are some things that do bother me about this car, and one of those is the placement of the fuel door. For some reason, it is on the passenger side of the car. I know every car has it on a different side, and I can't really figure out any sort of reason why companies pick one way or the other, but Subarus are all on the right side of the car, which in Japan I'm sure is great because you're on the right side and you can get right out and fill up your car. But in the US, of course, we drive on the left, which means anytime I want to fill up my car, I have to pop the fuel hatch, come all the way around this side of the car, fill it up, and all the way back to the other. I know it's not a big deal, it's not like it's hard, but it's a lot more inconvenient than having it on the driver's side of the car. So I mentioned earlier that I wish there was a keyhole on the liftgate. Another place I would like to see a keyhole is on the passenger door handle. This is something almost every car company seems to do, just not include a second keyhole, and I really don't understand why. Yes, it's not often you're going to use this keyhole, but it really comes in handy. On cars I've used that have had one, it's really a lot nicer. Just every once in a while when you need it, it's a lot nicer to have it there. So I've always found it interesting how people are all worried about how the outside of the car looks and the specs, the power, the torque, all those things about their car, but not really the interior, when the interior is where you're going to spend most of your time. So let's have a look at some of the features of the interior and how all of it works. So when you first get in, something you'll notice is it does have steering wheel mounted controls for the radio and the cruise control. Now yes, this isn't revolutionary, a lot of cars have this, but I have driven plenty of cars that don't have steering wheel mounted controls, and it does really come in handy. It's definitely a solid feature. Another thing you'll notice when you go to start the car is, like a lot of modern sports cars, the gauges actually max out when you start the engine. They'll max out and then go back to zero. It's kind of a small detail, but I think it looks kind of cool. I also happen to like the blue gauges quite a bit. One thing I don't like about the car is it does kind of confuse its lights. The gauges in the center are blue, like I mentioned earlier. Some of the accent lighting is blue, but a lot of this stuff, like the climate controls, the radio, they're all red at night. Obviously, you're not going to be able to see it here, but I don't understand why they couldn't make it all blue or all red. On a related note, all car manufacturers should give you the option. Just put RGB LEDs in the interior lighting so people can just choose. Wouldn't it be nice if you could pick what color your interior lighting is? I feel like that's not that hard. There's much more advanced things in cars today than configurable interior lighting. So another thing you might not think about when you're going to buy a car is the feel of the turn signal stocks, and these ones are quite nice. They have a nice solid click into place. They don't feel super cheap and plasticky like a lot of cars. I really do enjoy them. It's something you touch all the time that you wouldn't think about, but it really increases the feel of the car. Another thing I like, I'm not sure if you can actually see it, but there's a small display up top there, I think you can kind of see it, which has the outside temperature, your average miles per gallon, and the clock. And you actually can see two different MPG ratings. You can see the one for trip A and trip B. So of course in the center gauge cluster here, you can switch between a trip A and a trip B, and that will be reflected with your average miles per gallon. One thing the car doesn't have that I really wish it had would be a range gauge. I feel like if they can do miles per gallon up there, they would be able to do range, but I guess they don't want to take the chance or something of it being wrong. But it makes it a lot easier than just having this big gauge in the center that shows you sort of roughly where you are on fuel. Another thing that's kind of strange about this car is the cup holders are square, which is weird because I don't know about you, but I don't use a lot of square cups. They do work, but with like cans and stuff, they have a tendency to sort of slide around when you go to accelerate or brake, which is not super convenient. However, you do have a nice large center console. As you can see, you have your aux port down there, which I have a Bluetooth adapter connected to. You also have a auxiliary power, so another 12-volt socket. There's also another one up here that I have my wireless charger connected to, so you have 3 total in the car, including the one in the back, which is kind of nice. It is a fairly big thing, a fairly big storage compartment, although I don't put much in there because it'll bang against those. You can remove this little dish up front as well as this little thing here. You can just sort of place that up in there, and then you have a nice long compartment here if you want to fit some sort of long newspaper or something in there. I'm not really sure, although when it's like that You can see into it from the outside, which is not super convenient if you're worried about people seeing your stuff inside of the car. Another cool thing is this armrest actually moves up and back, which is kind of cool. It slides forward and backward. Of course, it opens up. And all in all, it's a pretty useful little compartment. These two, in case you're wondering what those are the heated seat controls. You have driver and passenger heated seats. No rear heated seats in this car, but of course that's to be expected. So the seats actually aren't the only thing that is heated. This car is equipped with the cold weather package, which I believe includes the rubberized floor mats, as well as defrosting windshield wipers and heated side mirrors. At least I think the mirrors are heated. I've read that online. I can't really feel a difference when I turn on. They turn on when you turn on the rear defroster. I can definitely feel the windshield heating up, but I can't really feel the mirrors. So either mine are broken, or it's just not that noticeable, or it doesn't have them. But supposedly it has heated side view mirrors. So clearly there's a lot to like about this car as far as winter capabilities. Between the defrosting front window, the all-wheel drive, the 8.7 inches of ground clearance, it really is a beast to be reckoned with in the snow. And I decided I would take that one step further by paying $350 for a remote start system, which definitely comes in handy in the winter. I think I mentioned earlier I didn't get any key fobs with the car when I bought it, so adding the remote starter was a great way to get keyless entry, as well as a really nice remote start system, which once you've used once, you really won't want to go back. I know $350 seems like a lot to spend, but believe me, when you can get in a nice warm car in the middle of February, it really all seems worth it.
Bet you can't do this in your family sedan.
Anyway, I think that just about covers all of the main features of the car, some annoyances and some things I really like about it. If you have any questions or there's anything I missed, feel free to drop a comment down below. I'd be happy to answer you. If you want to see any more videos on the car, let me know. I will be making a review at some point in the future, but if you have anything else you'd like to see, I would be happy to make it. Also, let me know how the audio sounds. I'm using a new microphone. It is the Rode Video Mic Go, so it should sound a bit better, although there's a lot of wind, so it might sound better once, you know, we're not outside in the wind. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed, and until next time,